The wind, a relentless sculptor of the high desert, carried the scent of coming snow, a biting promise against Elias Thorne's weathered cheek. His German shepherd, Ghost, a magnificent sable-coated creature with eyes that held the wisdom of ancient forests, suddenly froze, muzzle twitching, a low, guttural growl rumbling deep in his chest. This wasn't the usual deer scent alarm or the distant howl of a coyote. This was different. Ghost's hackles rose, a bristling ridge of fur along his spine, and his powerful body tensed, a coiled spring of instinct. He began to dig, not with the playful abandon of a dog unearthing a forgotten bone, but with an urgent, almost desperate intensity, sending sprays of frozen earth flying. Elias, a man whose own senses had been honed by the unforgiving crucible of combat, felt the prickle of unease. He'd learned long ago to trust Ghost's judgment implicitly. The dog had saved his life more times than he cared to count, both in the dusty, chaotic streets of Kandahar and in the quieter, yet equally treacherous, battlefields of his own mind. Elias knelt, his movements fluid despite the ache in his knees, a phantom pain that often accompanied the sharp bite of winter air. He watched Ghost, his brow furrowed. The dog was focused on a spot near the gnarled roots of an ancient juniper, a place Elias had walked 1,000 times, a familiar landmark on his daily patrols of the sprawling, isolated ranch he now called home. For 5 years, he'd sought refuge here, a quiet sanctuary from the deafening echoes of war, a place where the vast silence of the landscape offered a fragile balm to his fractured soul. He'd bought the dilapidated property with his meager savings, pouring sweat and what little peace he could muster into its restoration, finding a strange solace in the rhythm of manual labor. This was his escape, his fortress against a world that often felt too loud, too demanding, too full of ghosts of a different kind. Ghost's digging grew more frenzied, and a glint of dark, unnatural metal emerged from the churned earth. Not a rock, not a discarded piece of farm equipment. This was something else. The metallic sheen was too smooth, too deliberate. Elias reached out, his gloved fingers brushing against the cold, unyielding surface. It was a dark, almost black hue, unlike anything he'd ever seen buried in the desert. He recognized the subtle curve, the deliberate angle. It was a vehicle, or part of one. A shiver, not from the cold, traced its way down his spine. The desert held its secrets close, but sometimes, like a stubborn wound, they bled to the surface. He felt a familiar surge of adrenaline, a sensation he'd tried to bury along with the memories of firefights and fallen comrades. His military training, dormant for years, began to stir, a quiet hum beneath the surface of his skin. He needed to be careful. He needed to understand what Ghost had found. And if you're finding this story as compelling as I hope, please consider subscribing to the channel. Your support helps us bring more tales of loyalty, courage, and unexpected discoveries to life. Ghost continued to excavate, his powerful paws tearing at the soil with a relentless determination. More of the dark metal emerged, revealing a distinctive, armored curve. Elias's breath hitched. He knew that shape. He'd ridden in vehicles like it, had seen them torn apart by IEDs, had witnessed their protective shell become a tomb. This was an armored personnel carrier, or at least a significant portion of one, buried deep beneath the arid soil. The sheer audacity of it, the effort required to conceal such a massive object, spoke volumes. This wasn't a casual dumping. This was a deliberate act of concealment, a secret meant to stay hidden, perhaps forever. He pulled a small, tactical shovel from his pack, the familiar weight of comfort in his hand, and began to help Ghost, carefully clearing away the compacted earth. The air grew colder, and the first flakes of snow began to drift down, soft and silent against the harsh landscape, a stark contrast to the grim discovery. As more of the vehicle was exposed, a sense of dread began to coalesce in Elias's gut. The APC was old, its paint faded and scarred, but its integrity seemed largely intact. No signs of explosive damage, no gaping holes from heavy artillery. This wasn't a battlefield casualty. This was something else entirely. He worked methodically, his military precision kicking in, each scoop of dirt deliberate, each movement conserving energy. Ghost, sensing the gravity of the situation, worked in tandem, his digging precise, his focus unwavering. Together, they uncovered enough of the vehicle to reveal a rear hatch, sealed tight, a formidable barrier against the elements and prying eyes. Elias ran his gloved hand over the cold steel, feeling the rivets, the seams, the sheer solidity of it. This was no ordinary vehicle. This was a relic, a ghost of a past conflict, perhaps, or a testament to a clandestine operation. His mind raced, piecing together fragments of information, drawing on years of intelligence briefings and operational experience. Who would bury an armored vehicle out here, in the middle of nowhere? And why? The answers that flickered through his mind were unsettling, hinting at something far more sinister than a simple act of disposal. He thought of the quiet corruption that sometimes festered in rural communities, the whispers of illicit activities that occasionally reached his isolated ranch. But an APC? That was a different league entirely. This was a secret with weight, with consequence. He knew, with a chilling certainty, that his quiet life had just been irrevocably altered. The desert, which had offered him solace, was now revealing a dangerous truth, a truth that threatened to pull him back into the very kind of conflict he had desperately tried to escape. The snow intensified, a swirling curtain of white that began to obscure the familiar contours of the landscape. Elias knew he couldn't leave the discovery exposed. The elements, or worse, prying eyes, would quickly claim it. He needed to gain access, to understand what lay within its metal shell. The rear hatch, though formidable, offered the most likely point of entry. He examined it closely, his fingers tracing the outline of the locking mechanism. It was old school, a heavy-duty military latch, designed to withstand hell itself. He'd seen them on old transport vehicles, on armored bunkers. It wouldn't be easy to open. He retrieved a pry bar from his truck, its cold steel a familiar weight in his hand. Ghost sat patiently, watching him with an unnerving intensity, his eyes reflecting the falling snow, mirroring Elias's own apprehension. The dog seemed to understand the gravity of the situation, his silence a powerful affirmation of the unspoken bond between them. Elias worked carefully, methodically, leveraging the pry bar against the frozen metal, grunting with effort. The latch groaned, protesting years of rust and neglect, but it held firm. He tried again, putting his full weight into it, his muscles straining, the cold biting at his exposed skin. Finally, with a sharp, metallic screech that echoed eerily in the falling snow, the latch gave way. A gust of stale, earthy air, heavy with the scent of damp metal, and something else, something cloying and ancient, escaped from the breach. Elias hesitated, his hand on the now unlocked hatch. His instincts screamed caution. What lay within could be anything: explosives, hazardous materials, or something far more unsettling. He took a deep breath, the cold air burning his lungs, and slowly, deliberately, pulled the heavy hatch open. It swung inward with a groan, revealing a cavernous, dark interior. He shone his tactical flashlight into the gloom. The beam cut through the darkness, illuminating a scene that stole his breath. The APC wasn't empty. It was filled, not with weapons or supplies, but with wooden crates, stacked neatly, almost reverently, from floor to ceiling. Each crate was marked with a faded, stenciled insignia that Elias didn't immediately recognize, but the style, the font, whispered of military origins. And then he saw it, a single, small, hand-painted symbol on one of the crates, a stylized raven, its wings outstretched, clutching a single, broken arrow. A symbol he'd seen before, in hushed conversations, in old intelligence files, a symbol associated with a clandestine operation, a ghost unit rumored to have been disbanded decades ago. His heart hammered against his ribs. This wasn't just an old APC. This was a time capsule, a hidden vault containing secrets that had been buried for generations. The air inside the vehicle was thick with the dust of forgotten years, and a profound sense of history, both exhilarating and terrifying, settled over him. Ghost whined softly, nudging Elias's hand, his eyes fixed on the crates. The dog's intuition was rarely wrong. Whatever was inside these crates, it was significant, and Elias knew, with a certainty that chilled him to the bone, that he had just stumbled upon a truth that could shatter the fragile peace he had painstakingly built for himself. The quiet desert had given up its most dangerous secret, and Elias Thorne was now inextricably bound to it. He spent the rest of the day, and well into the night, carefully extracting the crates from the belly of the APC. The snow continued to fall, blanketing the desert in a pristine, deceptive white, but Elias barely noticed the cold. His mind was racing, trying to make sense of the growing pile of wooden boxes beside the unearthed vehicle. Each crate was heavy, its contents shifting with a dull thud as he maneuvered them. He used his truck's winch to pull the heavier ones, the engine groaning under the strain. Ghost remained by his side, a silent, watchful companion, occasionally nuzzling his hand as if to offer reassurance. By dawn, the last crate was out, and Elias, exhausted but wired, stood amidst a small mountain of forgotten history. He chose the smallest, least damaged crate first, prying open its lid with painstaking care. Inside, nestled in a bed of desiccated straw, were not weapons, but documents. Thousands of them. Manila folders, bound ledgers, typewritten reports, all meticulously organized, all bearing the same faded raven insignia. He picked up a folder, his fingers trembling slightly. The paper was brittle, yellowed with age, but the ink was still legible. He skimmed the first few lines, his eyes widening in disbelief. These weren't ordinary military documents. These were intelligence reports, operational plans, and highly sensitive communications, detailing a covert operation from the Cold War era, an operation that was officially erased from all records. The sheer volume of information was staggering. He spent the next few days holed up in his cabin, the crates stacked around him, Ghost curled protectively at his feet. He ate little, slept less, his mind consumed by the revelations unfolding before him. The documents detailed an elaborate network of spies, counterintelligence operatives, and clandestine missions, all centered around a powerful, shadowy corporation known only as Aegis Global. Aegis, the reports claimed, was not just a defense contractor, but a front for a vast, interconnected web of influence, manipulating global politics and economies for its own nefarious ends. They had infiltrated governments, controlled media outlets, and orchestrated conflicts, all while operating in the shadows, their existence a closely guarded secret. The Raven Unit, the documents revealed, had been tasked with exposing Aegis, with bringing their machinations to light. But something had gone terribly wrong. The reports abruptly ceased, the final entries hinting at a betrayal, a leak from within the unit itself. The last few pages spoke of a desperate attempt to preserve the evidence, to bury it somewhere safe, far from the reach of Aegis Global. The APC, Elias realized, was not just a storage unit. It was a dead drop, a final act of defiance by a unit that had been silenced. The documents were their legacy, their last hope for justice. He felt a cold knot of fear tighten in his stomach. This wasn't just history. This was a live wire, still humming with danger. If Aegis Global was still operating, if they were as powerful and ruthless as these documents suggested, then Elias had just painted a very large target on his back. He was no longer just a veteran seeking solace. He was a custodian of dangerous truths, a reluctant inheritor of a decades-old battle. The quiet peace he had found in the desert was shattered, replaced by a growing sense of urgency and a grim determination. He knew, with a chilling certainty, that he couldn't simply ignore what he had found. The ghost of the Raven Unit had entrusted him with their truth, and Elias Thorne, a man who understood the heavy burden of duty, knew he had to see it through. The weight of the documents, both literal and metaphorical, pressed down on Elias. He spent weeks poring over them, the old cabin filled with the rustle of brittle paper and the soft click of his laptop keys as he began to digitize the most critical files. Ghost, ever vigilant, seemed to sense the change in atmosphere, his ears constantly swiveling, his eyes scanning the perimeter. The dog's quiet presence was a constant comfort, a tether to the present amidst the swirling vortex of the past. The more Elias read, the clearer the picture became. Aegis Global wasn't just a powerful entity. It was a hydra, its heads extending into every facet of society. The documents detailed their involvement in everything from resource exploitation in developing nations to the manipulation of elections in established democracies. Their methods were ruthless, their reach seemingly limitless. The Raven Unit, a small, elite group of intelligence operatives, had been systematically dismantled, their members either disappearing or dying under mysterious circumstances. The betrayal, the documents hinted, came from the highest echelons, a deep infiltration that had ultimately doomed their mission. One particular set of files caught Elias's attention. They were encrypted, requiring a level of cryptographic skill he didn't possess. But a small, hand-drawn sketch on the cover of the folder, a stylized map of the local area with a prominent X marked near a remote canyon, sparked a memory. He'd seen that canyon before, during one of his long, solitary hikes with Ghost. It was a place known for its ancient petroglyphs, a sacred site for the local indigenous community. The documents referenced it as Raven's Perch, a fallback location, a final sanctuary. A new theory began to form in Elias's mind. What if the APC wasn't the only hidden cache? What if the Raven unit had left other breadcrumbs, other pieces of the puzzle, in their desperate attempt to expose Aegis? The thought ignited a new sense of purpose in him. This wasn't just about understanding the past. It was about uncovering a present danger. If Aegis Global was still active, then the information he held was not just historical data, but a potent weapon. He packed a rucksack, his movements precise and economical, a muscle memory from his combat days. Ghost watched him, his tail giving a single, hopeful thump against the floor. Elias looked at the dog, a silent understanding passing between them. "Looks like we're going on another adventure, old friend," he murmured, his voice rough. Ghost responded with a soft whine and a nudge of his head, as if to say, "I'm ready." The trek to Raven's Perch was arduous, the terrain rugged and unforgiving. The snow had melted in the lower elevations, leaving muddy trails and slick rock faces. Elias navigated with the practiced ease of a man who knew the land intimately, Ghost always a few paces ahead, his nose to the ground, sniffing out the safest path. As they approached the canyon, a strange stillness settled over the landscape. The wind died down, the usual desert sounds muted, replaced by an eerie silence. They found it near a cluster of ancient petroglyphs, hidden beneath a carefully camouflaged rockfall. Not another APC, but a smaller, more accessible cache. This one contained not documents, but equipment, a satellite phone, old but functional, a shortwave radio, and a battered, military-grade laptop, its casing scarred but its internal components surprisingly intact. And with them, a single, handwritten note, its ink faded but its message clear. "The truth is a weapon. Wield it wisely. Look for the sparrow in the nest." Elias stared at the note, his mind racing. Sparrow, nest, these were code names, fragments of a forgotten language. He felt a surge of exhilaration, followed by a cold wave of apprehension. He was no longer just a passive observer. He was now an active participant in a game he barely understood, a game with potentially lethal consequences. The satellite phone was dead, its battery long since depleted. But the laptop, with a little coaxing and a power source from his truck, hummed to life. It was password protected, of course, but Elias, drawing on his own experience with secure systems, began to systematically try combinations. He thought of the Raven unit, their mission, their sacrifice. He tried Raven's Perch, nothing. He tried Aegis Global again, nothing. Then, on a whim, he tried Sparrow, the screen flickered, and a new interface appeared, a secure messaging system, a digital dead drop. A message, dated decades ago, was waiting for him. It was from the leader of the Raven unit, a man codenamed Night Owl. The message was a final plea, a desperate call for help, detailing the betrayal and the imminent collapse of their operation. It also contained a new set of instructions, a list of contacts, and a cryptic warning. Trust no one outside the nest. The sparrow is the key, Elias knew then, with a chilling certainty, that the battle was far from over. He was now a soldier in a war that had never officially ended, and the stakes were higher than he could have ever imagined. The laptop, with its secure messaging system, became Elias's lifeline to a past he was now inextricably linked to. He spent days in the cabin, the glow of the screen illuminating his determined face, Ghost always nearby, a warm, reassuring presence. The Sparrow message was a series of encrypted coordinates, leading to a network of digital dead drops, a complex web of information hidden in plain sight across the deep web. It was a digital treasure hunt, each clue leading to another, slowly revealing the full, horrifying scope of Aegis Global's operations. He discovered that Aegis Global wasn't merely a corporate entity. It was a multi-generational criminal enterprise, its roots stretching back to the post-war industrial complex. They had perfected the art of plausible deniability, operating through layers of shell companies, front organizations, and compromised officials. The documents detailed their involvement in illicit arms dealing, human trafficking, and the creation of bioweapons, all under the guise of legitimate defense contracts. The sheer depravity of their actions made Elias's stomach churn. The Nest, he learned, was a network of former intelligence operatives, disillusioned by the corruption within their own agencies, who had secretly continued the Raven Unit's mission. They were ghosts themselves, operating in the shadows, waiting for the right moment, or the right person, to reignite the fight. The Sparrow was a particular individual, a key player within the Nest, an old-school spymaster who had gone deep underground after the original Raven Unit's demise. The last message from Night Owl had indicated that the Sparrow held the final piece of the puzzle, the irrefutable evidence that could bring Aegis Global down. Elias, using the secure messaging system, began to establish contact with the Nest. It was a slow, painstaking process, fraught with paranoia and suspicion. He had to prove his bona fides, providing details from the unearthed documents, sharing the story of Ghost's discovery. Slowly, cautiously, they began to trust him. He learned that the Nest was small, fragmented, and deeply scarred by past betrayals. They had been waiting, patiently, for a sign, for someone to pick up the torch. Elias, the quiet veteran seeking solace, had inadvertently become that someone. He received a message from a contact codenamed Owl, a gruff, no-nonsense voice over the encrypted channel. Owl confirmed the existence of the Sparrow and the critical nature of their information. "The Sparrow is in danger, Thorne," Owl's voice crackled. "Aegis has been sniffing around, getting too close. They suspect someone is digging into their past. They're looking for the last pieces of the Raven Unit." A cold fear gripped Elias. He wasn't just uncovering history. He was actively disrupting a powerful, dangerous organization. He was now a target. The coordinates for the Sparrow's location arrived, encrypted within a complex cipher. It was a remote, off-grid compound in the mountains, hundreds of miles from Elias's ranch. The journey would be perilous, and he knew, with a grim certainty, that Aegis Global would be watching. He looked at Ghost, who sat patiently by his side, his eyes reflecting the flickering screen. "Looks like we're going on a long trip, boy," Elias said, his voice low. "And this time, it's not just about us," Ghost responded with a soft whine and a reassuring nudge, his loyalty a steadfast anchor in the storm that was rapidly gathering around them. Elias knew he couldn't back down. The weight of the Raven Unit's sacrifice, the depravity of Aegis Global, and the fragile hope of justice rested squarely on his shoulders. He was no longer just a veteran with a dog. He was a warrior, called back to duty by the ghosts of the past. The journey to the Sparrow's location was a test of endurance and vigilance. Elias drove for days, pushing his old truck to its limits, constantly checking his rearview mirror, his senses heightened, every shadow a potential threat. Ghost, nestled in the passenger seat, remained alert, his head swiveling, his keen nose sifting through the scents carried on the wind. They traveled through desolate stretches of highway, through small, forgotten towns, and finally, deep into the rugged, snow-capped mountains. Elias felt the familiar adrenaline hum of an active operation, a sensation he hadn't experienced since his days in uniform. The coordinates led them to a winding, unpaved road, barely more than a deer trail, that snaked its way up a steep mountainside. The air grew thinner, colder, and the silence of the wilderness became absolute, broken only by the crunch of tires on gravel. As they neared the designated location, Ghost suddenly stiffened, a low growl rumbling in his chest. His hackles rose, and he began to bark, a deep, urgent sound that echoed through the quiet forest. "What is it, boy?" Elias murmured, his hand instinctively going to the pistol holstered at his hip. Through a break in the trees, he saw it, a plume of smoke rising against the steel-gray sky. Not the gentle wisp of a chimney fire, but the dark, angry column of a burning building. His heart sank. They were too late. Aegis Global had found the Sparrow. He pressed the accelerator, the truck lurching forward, Ghost barking frantically, his intuition screaming danger. They burst into a clearing to find a scene of utter devastation. A small, remote cabin was engulfed in flames, its wooden structure collapsing in on itself. Two dark SUVs, sleek and menacing, were parked nearby, their engines idling. Armed men, dressed in tactical gear, moved with a brutal efficiency, searching the perimeter, their weapons glinting in the fading light. Elias slammed on the brakes, pulling the truck into the cover of a dense stand of pines. He cut the engine, plunging them into silence, save for the roar of the fire and the distant shouts of the men. "Stay here, Ghost," Elias whispered, but the dog was already pushing his way out of the truck, a low growl rumbling in his chest. His eyes, usually so gentle, were now narrowed, fixed on the burning cabin. Elias knew it was futile to argue. Ghost was a war dog, and he sensed battle. "All right, boy," Elias sighed, "but stick close." They moved through the trees, Elias moving with the silent grace of a hunter, Ghost a phantom at his heels. He observed the scene, his military training kicking in, assessing the numbers, the positions, the potential threats. There were at least 6 men, heavily armed, and they were clearly professionals. They were searching for something, or someone, amidst the burning wreckage. Then he heard it, a faint cry, a guttural cough, coming from the edge of the clearing, near a rocky outcrop. Someone was still alive. He signaled to Ghost, a subtle hand gesture, and the dog immediately understood, veering off to flank the enemy, using the dense undergrowth as cover. Elias moved in, his pistol drawn, his movements fluid and precise. He took down the first 2 men quickly, silently, using the element of surprise and his superior tactical skills. Ghost, meanwhile, created a diversion, barking and snapping at the legs of the remaining men, drawing their attention away from Elias. In the ensuing chaos, Elias reached the rocky outcrop. A figure, old and frail, lay crumpled against the rocks, coughing violently, smoke stinging his eyes. It was the sparrow. He was injured, but alive. "Are you the sparrow?" Elias whispered, his voice urgent. The old man nodded, his eyes wide with fear and relief. The drive," he rasped, pointing to a small, metallic flash drive clutched in his hand. "It's all there. Everything." Just then, a voice barked orders, and the remaining Aegis operatives converged on their position. Elias knew they were outmatched, outnumbered. He had to get the sparrow and the drive out. Ghost returned, a whirlwind of fur and teeth, snapping at the legs of the approaching men, buying Elias precious seconds. Elias hoisted the injured sparrow onto his back, the old man surprisingly light. "Hold on tight," Elias grunted, and with Ghost leading the way, they plunged back into the dark, unforgiving forest, the shouts of their pursuers echoing behind them. The battle for the truth had just begun, and Elias Thorne, a veteran seeking peace, was now leading the charge. The escape was a desperate, adrenaline-fueled blur. Elias, with the injured sparrow on his back and Ghost acting as a rear guard, plunged deeper into the treacherous mountain terrain. The Aegis operatives, relentless and well-trained, were hot on their heels, their shouts and the crackle of their radios echoing through the darkening forest. Elias used every ounce of his military training, every trick he'd learned in the unforgiving landscapes of Afghanistan, to evade them. He moved through dense thickets, scaled slippery rock faces, and navigated hidden ravines, his muscles screaming in protest, his lungs burning with exertion. Ghost, a furry, 4-legged whirlwind, was invaluable. He barked and snarled, drawing the attention of their pursuers, creating diversions, nipping at their heels when they got too close. His loyalty was absolute, his courage unwavering. He was Elias's shadow, his protector, his silent confidant. The sparrow, a man named Arthur Vance, clutched the flash drive tightly, occasionally whispering directions, his voice hoarse from the smoke and exertion. There's a cave," he rasped, pointing a trembling finger deeper into the woods. "A old smuggler's cave. It'll give us cover." They reached the cave just as darkness fully enveloped the mountains. It was a narrow, unassuming opening, almost completely hidden by overgrown brush. Elias half-carried, half-dragged Arthur inside, Ghost slipping in behind them, his body pressed against Elias's leg. The air inside was cold and damp, smelling of earth and ancient rock. Elias carefully laid Arthur down, checking his pulse and breathing. He was weak, but stable. "You did good, Arthur," Elias whispered, a genuine admiration in his voice. "You held on." Arthur gave a weak smile, his eyes fixed on the flash drive in his hand. This is everything, Elias," he coughed. "The proof. The final piece. It connects Aegis Global to a global network of terror. They're planning something big. Something that will destabilize the world." Elias felt a chill deeper than the mountain air. This wasn't just about corporate corruption anymore. This was about global catastrophe. He used his satellite phone to contact Owl, relaying their position and Arthur's condition. Owl's voice, though relieved, was grim. "Aegis is mobilizing, Thorne. They know you have the drive. They'll send everything they have. You need to get that drive to us. The nest is waiting, but we're exposed." Elias knew what that meant. He was alone, deep in enemy territory, with an injured man and a dog, holding the key to averting a global disaster. He spent the night tending to Arthur, using the limited medical supplies in his pack, and planning their next move. He knew he couldn't stay in the cave. Aegis would eventually find them. He needed a way out of the mountains, a way to deliver the drive to the nest. Arthur, despite his injuries, remained lucid, his mind sharp. He began to brief Elias on the contents of the drive, the names, the dates, the intricate web of deceit. He spoke of a critical data hub, a secure server farm hidden within a seemingly innocuous corporate building in a major city, a place where Aegis Global stored all their illicit data. "That's where the sparrow's nest is," Arthur explained, his voice gaining strength. "That's where the final pieces are. The proof you need to bring them down." As dawn broke, painting the eastern sky in hues of fiery orange and soft pink, Elias made a decision. He would not run. He would not hide. He would take the fight to Aegis Global. He would deliver Arthur and the drive, not just to the nest, but to the heart of Aegis Global's operations. He would expose them, once and for all. He looked at Ghost, who sat patiently, his eyes fixed on Elias, as if reading his thoughts. "All right, boy," Elias said, a grim determination in his voice. Time to go hunting. The quiet veteran, once seeking solace, was now a warrior once more, leading a loyal dog and an injured spymaster into the heart of a global conspiracy, ready to unleash the truth. The journey down the mountain was a brutal gauntlet. Elias, with Arthur still on his back and Ghost leading the way, faced a relentless pursuit from Aegis Global. They were hunted, stalked through the dense forests and across treacherous ridges. The Aegis operatives were no longer just searching, they were actively trying to eliminate them, their desperation palpable. Gunfire echoed through the trees, bullets whizzing past, splintering bark and kicking up dirt. Elias moved with a primal instinct, his military training a finely honed edge, anticipating every move, reacting with split-second precision. He used the terrain to his advantage, leading their pursuers into ambushes, creating diversions, forcing them to expend their resources. Ghost, a blur of fur and teeth, was a formidable ally, his fierce barks and strategic attacks buying Elias crucial seconds, distracting the enemy, allowing them to gain ground. Arthur, despite his pain, remained a guiding presence, whispering tactical advice, pointing out potential traps, his old spymaster's mind still sharp. "They're trying to funnel us," he rasped, pointing to a narrow canyon ahead. "Don't go in there. It's a kill zone." Elias veered off, taking a more difficult, but safer, route up a steep, rocky incline. His muscles screamed, his lungs burned, but he pushed through the pain, fueled by a grim determination and the knowledge of what was at stake. He knew they couldn't outrun them forever. They needed a plan, a way to turn the tables. As they reached the base of the mountain, a faint signal flickered on Elias's satellite phone. It was Owl. "Thorne, we've got a window." Owl's voice crackled, laced with urgency. "A small team. Ex-military. They're moving into position. We can create a diversion, give you a chance to break through. But you have to be ready." Elias nodded, a grim smile touching his lips. "We're ready, Owl. Give us the word." The diversion came in the form of a coordinated attack on one of Aegis Global's forward operating bases, a small, camouflaged outpost hidden in the foothills. Explosions rocked the mountain, sending plumes of smoke into the sky, drawing away a significant portion of Aegis's forces. It was their chance. Elias, with Arthur and Ghost, broke through the perimeter, pushing towards the highway. They reached Elias's truck, still hidden in the clearing, just as the first Aegis reinforcements arrived. It was a desperate firefight. Elias returned fire, covering Arthur as he clambered into the passenger seat. Ghost, barking furiously, engaged the enemy, his powerful body a shield, his teeth a weapon. Elias jumped into the driver's seat, started the engine, and with a roar, they sped away, leaving the chaos and the burning mountain behind them. The drive to the city was a race against time. Arthur, using the recovered laptop, began to access the secure network, downloading the final, critical files from the Sparrow's nest, the data hub he had spoken of. The information was staggering, irrefutable proof of Aegis Global's plan to launch a series of coordinated cyberattacks, targeting critical infrastructure across the globe, designed to create chaos and instability, allowing them to seize control of vital resources and political power. They're calling it Operation Phoenix Rising, Arthur rasped, his eyes wide with horror. They believe they can burn the world down and rebuild it in their image. Elias felt a cold rage build within him. He had seen the devastation of war firsthand, the innocent lives shattered, the communities destroyed. He would not allow Aegis Global to unleash that kind of terror on the world. He contacted Al again, relaying the new information, the urgency in his voice palpable. "We need to hit them, Al. Now. We need to stop Operation Phoenix Rising." Al's response was immediate. "The nest is moving. We've got a lead on the primary server farm, the heart of Operation Phoenix Rising. It's in the city, a seemingly innocuous corporate building. We're going in, but it's heavily fortified, Thorne. This is a suicide mission." Elias looked at Ghost, who sat beside him, his gaze steady, unwavering. He looked at Arthur, who, despite his injuries, was still working feverishly on the laptop. "We're coming, Al," Elias said, his voice firm, resolute. "And we're bringing the truth with us." The quiet veteran, once seeking peace, was now leading a charge into the heart of darkness, a loyal dog and an injured spymaster by his side, ready to confront the architects of global chaos. The city, a sprawling labyrinth of steel and glass, was a stark contrast to the desolate peace of Elias's ranch. It hummed with a nervous energy, a palpable tension that Elias, with his heightened senses, could almost taste. The target building, a sleek, modern skyscraper, stood out like a beacon of corporate power, its reflective facade hiding the insidious darkness within. Elias, Arthur, and Ghost, now disguised in borrowed civilian clothes, blended into the bustling crowds, ghosts in a concrete jungle. Al and a small team from the nest met them in a grimy, back-alley diner, its greasy aroma a strange comfort amidst the escalating tension. The team consisted of hardened veterans, former intelligence operatives, their faces etched with the scars of past battles, their eyes reflecting a shared sense of purpose. They were the last remnants of the Raven unit's legacy, a desperate, determined few. "The building is a fortress," Al explained, sketching out a diagram on a napkin. "Multiple layers of security. Biometric scanners, armed guards, internal patrols. The server farm is on the top floor, a reinforced bunker." Arthur, his face pale but his eyes burning with resolve, presented the flash drive. "This is the kill switch," he said, his voice weak but firm. "It contains the codes to disable Operation Phoenix Rising. But it has to be uploaded directly to their primary server." The plan was audacious, bordering on suicidal. They would have to breach the building, fight their way through layers of security, and upload the codes before Aegis Global could launch their cyberattack. The clock was ticking. Elias looked at Ghost, who sat calmly beneath the table, his presence a grounding force amidst the storm. "You ready for this, boy?" he murmured. Ghost responded with a soft nudge of his head, his eyes reflecting an unwavering loyalty. Elias knew what he was asking of his dog, and of himself. This wasn't just another mission. This was the culmination of decades of struggle, the last stand against a global evil. The assault on the building was a symphony of calculated chaos. Elias and his team, moving with the precision of seasoned professionals, breached the perimeter, neutralizing the external guards with swift, silent efficiency. Ghost, a blur of motion, created diversions, his barks and snarls drawing attention, allowing the team to advance deeper into the building. The interior was a maze of polished marble and stark, corporate sterility, a chilling facade for the darkness within. They encountered heavy resistance on the upper floors. Aegis Global had anticipated their move, their operatives waiting, armed and ruthless. It was a brutal firefight, the silence of the corporate offices shattered by the crackle of gunfire and the shouts of men. Elias fought with a cold, focused fury, his combat instincts honed to a razor's edge. He moved through the building like a phantom, his pistol a deadly extension of his will, his movements economical and precise. Ghost, always by his side, attacked with a primal ferocity, his teeth and claws a formidable weapon against the armed men. Arthur, despite his injuries, pressed forward, clutching the flash drive, his determination unwavering. Owl and the rest of the nest fought with a desperate courage, their numbers dwindling, but their resolve unbroken. They were fighting for more than just their lives. They were fighting for the future of the world. They finally reached the top floor, the entrance to the server farm, a massive, reinforced door. It was guarded by Aegis Global's elite, their most dangerous operatives. Elias knew this was it, the final confrontation. He looked at Ghost, who stood beside him, his body tense, ready for the fight. "This is for them, boy," Elias whispered, a silent promise to the ghosts of the Raven unit. With a roar, he charged, Ghost a loyal shadow at his side, leading the charge into the heart of Aegis Global's darkness, ready to unleash the truth and bring down a global empire. The battle for the server farm was a maelstrom of violence, a desperate, bloody struggle in the sterile confines of Aegis Global's inner sanctum. The elite operatives, clad in black tactical gear, moved with a ruthless efficiency, their weapons spitting fire, their faces grim. Elias, Ghost, and the remaining members of the nest were outnumbered, outgunned, but their will was unbreakable. They fought with a ferocity born of desperation, fueled by the knowledge of what was at stake. Elias moved like a phantom, his pistol a deadly extension of his will, his movements a blur of tactical precision. He ducked, weaved, and fired, taking down Aegis operatives with swift, brutal efficiency. Ghost, a whirlwind of fur and teeth, was a force of nature, attacking with a primal ferocity, his barks echoing through the server room, his powerful body a shield, his teeth a weapon. He engaged the enemy, distracting them, creating openings for Elias and the nest. Arthur Vance, despite his debilitating injuries, crawled towards the main server, the flash drive clutched tightly in his trembling hand. He was a man driven by a singular purpose, the weight of decades of secrets and sacrifices pushing him forward. Owl and the remaining nest operatives formed a protective perimeter around him, laying down suppressive fire, their numbers dwindling, but their resolve unwavering. The fight was brutal, relentless. Elias saw members of the nest fall, their sacrifices fueling his rage, hardening his resolve. He fought for them, for Arthur, for the ghosts of the Raven unit, for the world that Aegis Global sought to burn. He saw a flash of movement, a figure emerging from the shadows, the leader of Aegis Global, a man whose face he recognized from the documents, a man known only as the architect. He was a cold, calculating presence, his eyes devoid of emotion, his voice a chilling whisper as he barked orders to his remaining operatives. Elias engaged the architect directly, a brutal, hand-to-hand struggle amidst the whirring servers and flashing lights. The architect was surprisingly agile, his movements precise and deadly, a testament to years of clandestine training. But Elias was fueled by a righteous fury, his every move imbued with the weight of purpose. He fought for justice, for truth, for the countless lives Aegis Global had destroyed. As they grappled, Elias saw Arthur, with a final, desperate surge of strength, plug the flash drive into the main server. A surge of energy coursed through the network, the lights flickering, the screens going dark. Operation Phoenix Rising was halted. The kill switch was activated. The world was safe. The architect, seeing his grand plan crumble, let out a guttural roar of frustration and rage. He lunged at Elias, a knife flashing in his hand. But before he could strike, Ghost, with a guttural snarl, launched himself at the architect, a blur of fur and teeth. The dog clamped down on the man's arm, his powerful jaws holding fast. The architect screamed, dropping the knife. Elias seized the opportunity, delivering a decisive blow that sent the architect sprawling, unconscious. The remaining Aegis operatives, seeing their leader defeated and their operation compromised, dropped their weapons, their faces etched with defeat. The battle was over. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the whirring of the servers and the ragged breathing of the survivors. Elias knelt beside Arthur, who lay against the server rack, his eyes open, a faint smile on his lips. "We did it, Elias," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "We stopped them." Arthur Vance, the Sparrow, had finally completed his mission. He had brought down the architects of global chaos. Elias gripped his hand, a profound sense of respect and gratitude in his heart. Arthur had found his peace, but it was a peace bought at a terrible price. In the aftermath, law enforcement and international authorities, alerted by Owl and the Nest, swarmed the building. The evidence from Arthur's flash drive was irrefutable, exposing Aegis Global's global network of terror, their illicit activities, and their vast web of corruption. Arrests were made, indictments issued, and the world watched in stunned disbelief as a shadowy empire crumbled. Elias Thorne, the quiet veteran who had sought solace in the desert, found himself hailed as a hero. But he shunned the spotlight, the accolades. He had done what he had to do, guided by his unwavering sense of duty and the silent companionship of his loyal dog. He returned to his ranch, to the vast, open spaces that had once offered him refuge, now a place of healing and new purpose. Ghost, a true war hero, remained by his side, his unwavering loyalty a constant reminder of the profound bond they shared. The unearthed APC, a relic of a forgotten war, was now a monument to the truth, a testament to the courage of those who dared to stand against the darkness. Elias, with Ghost by his side, began to rebuild his life, not as a man running from his past, but as a man embracing his future, a future where the quiet strength of a veteran and the unwavering loyalty of a dog had changed the world. He started a foundation, using the resources from the now-defunct Aegis Global to help other veterans struggling with PTSD and to protect the wild, untamed lands he had come to love. The scars remained, but so did the hope, a quiet, enduring flame in the heart of the desert.